Thank you for joining me today. It's Brian Gubernick, and welcome to the No Days Off podcast, where we believe that every single day brings a new opportunity to get better. There is a sentence that I just cannot stop thinking about, and I've been thinking about it since my partner in metrics, Ben Kinney, had uttered it in our meeting last week. It's been on my mind, and the sentence was, knowledge you cannot retrieve is not an asset. It is a receipt for money you wasted. Let me say it again. Knowledge that you cannot retrieve is not an asset. It is a receipt for money you wasted. I think I've been thinking about this one so much because it kind of stings when you process it. Because I'm guessing you, like me, we spend a lot of money on learning, buying books, taking courses, going to conferences, going to masterminds. Maybe we spend money on coaching, or we spend a lot of time on podcasts, workshops, training events, you name it. If you're a high performer, you're spending money on these things and time on these things. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It goes without saying, I'm a huge believer in learning. Here's the hard truth though. Most people are better at consuming information than they are at converting that information. They read the book, they underline and flag half the book, they feel inspired, and then they forget the useful parts. Or maybe that's just me. Or they attend the event and they take all these notes and they're super hyped up about what they just learned. And then 30 days later, they cannot recall the 3 biggest lessons. They listen to the podcast. They nod along. They're like, yes, that's it. And then never change their behavior. See, that is not learning. That is exposure. And exposure is not the same thing as learning. It's not the same thing as ownership. So the real question is not, did I hear it? The real question is, can I retrieve it when I need it? Because in business, to be able to recall is actually leverage. Remembering a client's name builds trust faster than any sales script that you have. Remembering a detail from a conversation makes someone feel seen. Remembering what you learned from a book or a coach or a mastermind, that turns the cost, the tuition, into ROI. But if you cannot retrieve it, it is just not useful. You've wasted your time, you've wasted your money. If it's sitting in your brain somewhere like a file, but there's no search function for it, it's wasted. And I think this is why so many people think they have a motivation problem when they really have a forgetting problem. I could tell you, for me, no question, I have a lot of room for improvement here. You get frustrated when your team does not remember the training. You get annoyed when your agents don't remember the script. As leaders, we get frustrated with ourselves when we're looking back in hindsight and recognize we forgot the standard. We get frustrated by the kids that don't remember the lesson. And we all assume like the answer is to just say it louder or say it again or make people care more. But the real answer is not that. The real answer has got to be to build a system that beats forgetting. Because rereading feels like learning, highlighting feels like learning, listening again, it feels like learning. But the reality is retrieval is learning. Pulling information out strengthens memory more than putting information back in. And that's why testing works. Not testing like school where people get judged, but testing as practice. Trying to recall without notes. Teaching it back, writing down the 3 ideas, forcing yourself to explain it to someone else, using whatever that lesson is intentionally in a meeting, applying whatever it is you learned before the day ends. See, that feeling lies a little bit. Rereading feels comfortable because the information looks familiar. And familiarity tricks you into thinking you know it. But familiarity is not mastery. See, you know it when you could retrieve it without actually looking. And then there is spacing. Cramming information is just renting knowledge. If you've been to school and you were a great test taker, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Cramming is just renting knowledge. Spacing, in the way I'm describing it, though, is owning it. So if you want something to stick, revisit it after 1 day, then 3 days, then 7 days, then 21 days. Each retrieval flattens what Ben was calling in his presentation he was doing, flattens the forgetting curve. See, you are not learning harder, you are just forgetting slower. So if you want something to stick, revisit it after day 1, revisit it 3 days later, revisit it then 7 days, then 21 days, and then every retrieval flattens that forgetting curve. That one idea could change how you train a team. And every training, if you want to deepen this understanding, end every training with a 3-question recall quiz. Requiz the same points a week later. Have someone teach the concept back in a meeting. Build onboarding around retrieval and spacing, and not just binder dumping. Because binder dumping is what a lazy team or a lazy organization would do. They hand someone 50 pages of information, and then they confuse the exposure with development. Real training, when you start studying at a deep level, a real training system is going to ask, hey, what do we need people to retrieve under pressure? And that becomes the standard. And I think this applies personally too. When you finish a book, don't just close it and move on. Write the 3 ideas that you want to use. Put a reminder on your calendar, say a week later, to recall them with no notes. Teach one idea to your team, build one behavior around it. I think this is getting a little redundant by design. When you leave a mastermind, for example, do not rely on inspiration. That inspiration will in fact fade. Build a retrieval before you forget. Write the top 3 takeaways. Decide the one you will apply. Put it somewhere you will see it. Review it in a week. Review it in a week. See, this is not magic. This is just simply creating more attention by building in a system. And that is really the point of this whole episode. Memory is not just who you are, it is actually what you practice. So stop measuring learning by what you consume and start measuring it by what you can retrieve, apply, and teach. Because again, knowledge you cannot retrieve will not help you in the meeting. It will not help you in the negotiation, the sale, the leadership moment. It's not going to help you in the hard conversation. It is not an asset yet. It's just a receipt. So take action around these things today. Whatever it is you've learned, and maybe you've learned something from this podcast today, write it down, come back to it by the end of the day, revisit it in 3 days and 7 days, and then go teach it to someone and watch what that retrieval will do to your memory. That's all I have for you today, the No Days Off podcast. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, every single day brings a new opportunity to get better. So let's get after it.